why we do that, Ed? You just give a reminder to a bit about Thomas Murray and the cyber practice.
Yeah, sure. So, as I said, whilst everybody kind of joins and people finish up their coffees or teas or kind of get them ready, just a little bit about Thomas Murray and the cyber team. So, Thomas Murray been around now for 30 years. The cyber practice is considerably newer, but we're very excited to be part of this organization that serves such illustrious clients as the ones that are listed here. So very, very focused on financial services and kind of all these nuts and bolts and all the plumbing of financial services infrastructure across the globe.
Amazing. A bit about the cyber practice that we have.
Yeah, thanks. So the cyber practice started just over a year ago now. We are made up of individuals across Europe. So as we've heard, Shreeji is based in Belgium. We've got a number of other individuals kind of in Europe as well, but the majority of the team is based in the UK for our sins. The previous employers, so everybody from kind of private sector, so that's the Kroll, the EY, PwCs, through to the public sector, and some really useful insights from that kind of cross-pollination of individuals. We've got really good connections into regulators, and I guess organizations that have real influence on cybersecurity policy, again, through the connections that we've got and that we've made.
Amazing. We give one last minute for people to join in, and then we'll kick it off. Again, warm welcome to everyone who's joining in. Today's session, we are going to focus more on the state of play of DORA. We cover where we are from a DORA point of view as we get to the deadline of tomorrow, when it all starts from a compliance point of view, and how do we see 2025 evolving. That's going to be the objective. I am joined with my very good friend and colleague Ed. We'll start off. We're 3 minutes above the scheduled time. I guess we can start off as usual. Some housekeepings. Please raise your questions in the chat. We'll be doing some polls. Please contribute to the poll questions. It gives us very interesting insights and also some immediate feedback that we can share and learn from each other. Additionally, this session is being recorded, so the recording would be made available. The slides would be shared for everyone. So keep an eye on the emails from our side on that. And let's kick it off. Let's keep it interesting. Ask questions, contribute to the polls. With that, we start off with the usual poll just to get a sense of which sort of region you are from, to get an understanding of the demographics of people joining in.
I was stressed as well whilst people are answering the poll questions here. It's when we go into some of the details later on, actually understanding where people are coming from, or dialing in from, or where the business is based is not just interesting for us, but it's really important from a prioritization for businesses and stuff. So the more information we have, the better.
Just give 10 seconds, 15 seconds more for people designing. I see there still people completing it. Just give it last bit. We can close it. We do have people joining from Bulgaria, Denmark, Germany, Greece, very interesting, Lithuania,
Romania.
diverse. Romania, the Netherlands, fairly good spread. There are a lot of people that are not within EU, which makes sense. There might be someone from UK or the US. Welcome. One additional poll before we dive into the content. This is to better understand what sort of primary organizations you are working with, to get a feeling of the subsectors that we have in scope of DORA. It's a lot to read. We'll possibly take a minute or so to go through this poll while you provide your input on this one.
And again, the if you please click whichever one you think is most relevant. I'd stress don't overthink it. Go with the one you feel most comfortable with. But we've seen such a variance within the industry, by the financial services industry, and also kind of straying into the IT side of things, that again, understanding where people are based and the organizations that they come from is really useful and insightful. Just as such, the broad range of organizations that are impacted by this regulation means that by its very nature, you do have that natural variance.
Super. We keep this on for another 30 seconds. Admin, the people still providing input. So great. We do have good distribution. We do have people from credit institution, payment institution, CSDs, investment firms, trading venues. We do have a lot of ICT third parties, which is great, and there are some who are from any other sector. So again, good mix of organizations. Hopefully, we'll kind of cover content that is relevant to your specific entities. What we're gonna cover for today fairly quickly is we're gonna give an overview of where we are from a level 2 tax status from a regulatory point of view. Then we are gonna harp on one messages. This is something that we've covered in our previous webinar. What is the expectation of the regulator and the regulations from a senior management and management or board members point of view? We'll share our understanding of DORA compliance status. So it's basically what we have observed in speaking to our clients when we've conducted similar polls on other webinars. And we'll also throw in some interesting tidbits on where competent authorities have undertaken some form of assessment and what has been their observations. Then we will focus on what we are reading from the various messages and supervisory themes coming out of various competent authorities, starting from ESA to we go through 5 or 6 more competent authorities within EU to get a flavor of what they are after from a 2025 point of view. And this is how we summarize on what we believe is the short-term 2025 goal that organization should work towards from a DORA compliance point of view. So where we are, I think we all appreciate the fact that we are one day before when DORA goes live. So from tomorrow onwards, compliance is expected. It started off 3 years ago. So we are at a stage where now it all starts becoming real. So far it's been preparatory work, but now it becomes real. However, there are some elements of the regulatory texts that are not yet fully adopted by the European Commission, which is a bit of a shame. But in essence, most of the regulatory texts have been formally adopted and published. There are 2 fairly important publications that have not yet been formally adopted. One is on the classification of incidents and One is on the RTS and ITS to specify reporting of major incidents, and you also have the RTS on subcontracting, which is still awaiting formal adoption. However, within this, there are fundamental elements that are important from a DORA reporting point of view, which is on major incident reporting. So, in case if there is a major incident that a financial entity within the scope of DORA experiences, as of tomorrow, it is expected that they report the same back to the regulator. There have been various notifications and circular issued by various competent authorities, which will come later down the line. The other is the register of information, for which it was clarified towards the end of the last year, and now there is a lot more communication from various competent authorities as to when they are expecting the register of information and how it is supposed to be reported. So all in all, there are few regulatory texts that have not been formally adopted, and this has been a constant challenge through this compliance journey for a lot of organizations where we have spoken to because of this uncertainty. However, most of the regulatory text have been available, and the general steer from ESAs has been, with whatever regulatory text have been available, organizations should prepare from a compliance point of view. So would like to throw in one more poll questions. Has this uncertainty on formal adoption of the regulatory text taken so much time? Has that impacted your compliance in any way? Ed, why we wait? Anything more to add?
Yeah, I think it's always an interesting one for individuals that aren't necessarily regulated by who aren't in kind of highly regulated industries. This whole concept of having a piece of regulation in place, but then not having the finer details ironed out might be kind of difficult to process, or not make sense. And my 2 cents on this is that it's always going to present an element of challenge to organizations if you don't have the really detailed requirements. It's almost a case of saying, we're going to sail to the US, but not having the boat ready or an indication of what the weather's doing. So yeah, it's from a personal perspective always quite fascinating to see these texts that are being released and then revised, and the feedback and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, interested to see whether the poll reflects that.
Yeah, we have 14% indicating that it has impacted significantly, but there are 11% who are saying not much, which is, I think, a pleasant surprise. But one of the rationales, I think, which I possibly alluded in my earlier verbatim, was that the regulatory texts have always been available. There are minor changes that have happened so far in the, at least on the ROI side, which is around LEI and EUID. So but it does make sense that some organizations believe that it has not significantly impacted their compliance journey. But very interesting to see there are other sets of organizations who have said it has impacted, but it's not that it's trivial. So thank you all for participating on this. By this, we kind of go back to one element of regulation that we've heard a lot of clients come back to us and say, can you pass on the message to our board members whenever doing a reporting towards board to mention about their roles and responsibilities in the context of operational resilience, and hence we are including the same again in this webinar. So there are specific responsibilities that are being called out in the regulatory text to the management body and senior management. And Ed, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think as we go through these, Shreeji will kind of make them kind of pop up. And ultimate responsibility for ICT kind of risk management. ICT is no longer something that sits in the background and takes care of itself. It really is a case of boards and senior execs being kind of heavily involved in the management of risk. And, it doesn't take much to see the impact that ICT outages or cyber incidents, or however you want to position it, has on an organization. So, yeah. Policy development it's 101 of kind of board direction, I guess, and executive support, but actually kind of explicitly outlining what it is that's expected from execs, and right down to the level of policy development, I think is fundamental and key. This is something that comes up again and again, this concept of a digital operational resilience strategy, and this is something that we're seeing a lot of clients kind of struggle with. It's a new concept, and we talk about it in a little bit more detail kind of later on, but ultimately there's a requirement for some organizations to have a documented strategy in place. Again, much like ICT risk management, business continuity. We've seen the importance of business continuity over the last couple of years. COVID-19 stress tested a lot of those business continuity plans, and really brought into focus the importance of this area. But again, making the management body and senior management responsible for this is where kind of DORA is really kind of shifting the dial. Unglamorous to some, entertaining for others, the concept of ICT audits. You've got your audit committees, you've got your individual kind of heads of audits. We're just making sure that mechanism isn't an element of just paying lip service, and really making sure it's embedded, and all that kind of stuff is fundamental.
Glamorous for your mates at PwC, Ed. I'm assuming that is what you're referring to.
Absolutely. Yeah, security, tech, traditionally not very good at the financial side of things. So in some respects, it's quite nice to have support from execs and the management body having ultimate responsibility for the financial side of things. But yeah, massively important to I guess, have a budget outlined for this kind of stuff. Third-party risk management, again, it's some of these things you might surprise individuals on the call because it is so far in the details, but the expectation is there that boards, really get to grips with key third parties where the third-party risk comes into place. So yeah, none of this is possible without training and knowledge. So yeah, no big one there. Again, making sure that things are working properly. No point having something if you're not reporting on it, or if you're not measuring it, you're not doing it, essentially. Again, making sure the third-party risk piece is being monitored and managed. We've seen the explosion of third-party risk as a concept, and the active management of third-party risk. It's a real focus area for clients, a real kind of, I guess, focus point for investors, for stakeholders, however you want to position it. That the heart of DORA is the management of third parties and third-party risk. So no big surprise on that one. Yeah, we mentioned ultimate responsibility for ICT risk management at the beginning, and making sure that continuous oversight of ICT risk is taking place. So yeah, this isn't a one and done activity. This is something that requires kind of ongoing commitment from the executive and the management body. Again, if you're not measuring it, you're not doing it. So specific periodic reporting, making sure that drumbeat within ICT, the expectations for organizations that you are reliant on, the expectations for key controls within your organization, the expectations for individuals in your organization is the expectation that there's regular reporting on this.
Yep.
Participation in crisis management. This is something that I think, out of everything, is probably potentially the thing that is most interesting for board members, the chance to experience and go through a crisis is what's needed in order for them to develop what we call kind of muscle memory. So there's an expectation that individuals will set aside time and join individuals from across their business and make sure that the necessary controls, mechanisms, and processes are there to essentially, I guess, be kicked into action in the event of an incident.
Yep. I think essentially what we're saying is that the regulation is asking fairly specific items to the senior management and to the board or the management body. We hope that you have been able to push this message into your organization's board and senior management, and have received the support from them through this DORA compliance journey. At And as I mentioned, there should also be, training and awareness. So the earlier one was that the management body had to have training and knowledge on ICT risk, and your senior management oversees the plan that is for the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is on top of the day job. It's something else that the management body need to kind of get to grips with. It's something else that they need to kind of understand, additional effort, additional pressure. But we see it as our role to make that as easy as possible.
Yeah, indeed.
Wonderful.
We hop over to another poll. We just like to get a view on how has your experience been in this so far. When we have been speaking to our customers, there have been few customers where the board have been super heavily engaged. We've seen clients where they have delegated this to an extent where there is a DORA compliance team which is driving end to end without like going back and forth to boards on updates on their DORA compliance. So we've seen a plethora of clients where at one extreme there is a board that is so actively involved that have been asking for regular updates on their compliance, and there have been instances where they've let them do what they have to do so far. So would be very interesting to see. It's I think 15%. Most of them are saying that they've been very engaged, and then you have almost equal distribution across the other three options, which is fairly
Excellent.
Interesting to kind of note. But very pleased for those organizations where the board have been very engaged, to be honest. So great to see that. Ed, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this kind of activity, kind of the DORA compliance effort requires so many different parts of the business that the executive leadership, senior management, board is so fundamental to the success of any kind of project. So to see that coming through is fantastic. I don't know if obviously the fact that individuals have joined this call means that they're perhaps engaged in DORA as a topic. We'll see in a minute some of the data that's been released at the back end of last year about organisations not being prepared. So we can compare that with the poll that we've got here, just as a interesting talking point, perhaps.
Super. This is something that we conducted a poll in our webinar in November. This is some of the output that we like to talk through, and what we've seen our clients kind of work towards in a sense. Ed, you want to pick it up?
Yeah, thank you. So as we said, there are some new concepts that have been kind of introduced. We've said that the breadth of organizations that have been impacted by this piece of regulation is extensive. So there are some kind of common themes here that are, I guess, consistent with our understanding of the industry. So registry of information should come as no surprise that this new requirement is something that the organizations are finding challenging. The implementation across group companies, well, this is the same as doing business, having multiple groups. What does the internal governance mechanism look like for DORA compliance? We're working with clients at the moment where the devil is in the detail when it comes to achieving compliance in an effective manner because of the group structure. Rapid instant reporting. So again, into the weeds when we talk about this. The expectations for instant reporting are very high. The window for reporting is very small, and it's, as we see in a minute, one of the key expectations that regulators are expecting to be in place tomorrow, which is terrifying and an interesting concept. Identifying critical and important services. So yeah, just the implementation of DORA, kind of what the requirements are. Understanding what I guess the translation of regulatory text into the business that the individuals are operating in. Again, the same for establishing risk tolerance. We talk about kind of risk appetite, risk tolerance. But yeah, what does that mean in reality? And then potentially my favorite thing, the exit strategies for ICT providers. The impact that this could have on, I guess, the ICT provider landscape across Europe is massive, and is no surprise that organizations are struggling to understand how they would exit from an ICT service provider, often when these relationships kind of date back decades. So yeah, understanding how you'd unpick all of those kind of dependencies is something that organizations are naturally struggling with. If anybody has struggled with anything else, then please drop it into the Q&A and we can dive into it. But hopefully none of that is a surprise. Some of it's a concern because some of these are just the underpinning components of kind of a successful DORA compliance program. But yeah, those are the things that we're seeing as organizations particularly struggling with.
And if you have, like Ed mentioned, if you have any thoughts on this struggle, do put it on chat, or if you have any questions on any of these challenges and issues, do let us know. We be happy to engage on this. I think just one point to add to what Ed was saying. I think where we've seen certain clients on the first point of managing implementation across group companies, we've seen a lot of business that was that had acquired a business, and that's where we've seen some struggle, purely because it was still unclear whether the policies are going to be of the group or they are going to continue with their own, and that decision making had impacted a lot of time. It also goes on to far nuanced discussions which are operational in nature about, are they integrated in our AD, yes or no? What is the impact whether they are integrated in AD or not? Do they have the same tool sets on detection, etc., etc.? So those have been significant challenges for few of our clients that work as multiple opcos and a group company set up. And their struggle was starting at a governance layer as to how the policies should be written, to fairly operational discussions around, right, we are not yet really integrated, what is the impact, and the like. So that has led to, in general, most organizations having some aspects of DORA compliance not yet met from a requirements point of view. So there are most organizations that we have spoken to have DORA requirements that are not fully compliant, meaning that there is a plan from a DORA compliance point of view, but they are not there as of tomorrow. And this is sort of validated or substantiated by what we've seen some of the competent authorities come out with some of the press release or survey results. So there are three examples right now. One is from Luxembourg, so CSF. They had done a survey uh, in September with the results out somewhere in October timeframe. And out of around 400 odd entities, only one entity that time had said they are almost ready. 71 perceive themselves as being partially ready, and 6% to not being ready, which is phenomenal if you just look at the numbers with just few months to go in from a DORA compliance point of view. So essentially, what we're trying to say is for organizations that have joined in, where you may have some aspects of DORA compliance still pending to be ticked off. It's an underlying theme that we've seen across our client base, to certain set of observations, even from competent authorities. The same is from Spain, where CNMV did a self-assessment. They issued a report on 4th of December. Uh, Around 250, 245, 250 odd organizations uh, uh, said participate in that. Uh, and if you look at it, none of these entities have claimed that they are fully DORA compliant. They only 18% have reviewed their compliance and allocated resources, meaning that there are still around 80% of organizations that may not have a full view of how they're going to achieve DORA compliance. So that's quite staggering, because this is a report which was issued in December 2024. You also have AFM in from the Netherlands. Uh, they have noted in a press release uh, that there are organizations that have not achieved DORA compliance, and it seems that unlikely they are going to be compliant by 17th of January. That is a regulator that has again made a press release late December. So all of these are fairly fairly latest sort of data stats, which kind of gives you a flavor of the lay of the land from a DORA readiness across various member states and financial entities. That uh, DORA compliance is something that most organizations will not be fully DORA compliant by tomorrow. Ed, your thoughts on the numbers? And
Yeah, I think just the I guess a consistent message here of a lot of organizations not being ready, smaller entities struggling with this in particular, those that potentially have kind of fallen below the threshold for other kind of regulations and kind of enforcement actions, that kind of thing. So it is a challenge for some organizations. Hopefully what we've got coming up next is insightful and useful. So I think if we flick onto
before we do that,
let's do another poll. So how confident are you about your current state? So based on what we've heard, there might be a fair few DORAs out there, but I suspect there's a moderately high level of confidence within the attendees.
we have a DORA declarer.
Excellent.
Ooh, 3.
I guess as a side note, when the GDPR came into force, the team at PwC held a GDPR Go Live party. I don't know how much of how exciting or what that was like. Well, yeah, I wonder if anybody here is holding a DORA Go Live party.
Shall we just give 5 more seconds, 10 more seconds to wrap this up?
Mm-hmm.
But fairly interestingly, most of the votes were for B. Significant number of organizations voted for B. There are equal amount of votes for A and C, which is very interesting, at least from my point of view. And someone has voted on D. Hopefully, it's an error, and they would sit under C. But as I'd mentioned, what we want to bring out is what we are hearing from the various competent authorities and how they are approaching 2025 from a supervisory actions, and we'll look to bring in some insights to them, from them, sorry, not to them. So uh, essentially, what we are reading into, we'll possibly summarize at the end of this section. Um, but from an ESA point of view, they had in December issued the supervisory priorities. What they had made clear is that there is no transitional period from DORA compliance, with meaning that it goes live tomorrow. I think we are all aware about that. What they have recommended is that it is expected that financial entities address in timely manner gaps between their internal setups and DORA requirements and prepare for new reporting obligations. So how we are reading this into is that organizations should be aware of where they are lacking and should have a roadmap to address the findings and ensure that two mandatory reporting, that is going to, register of information and major incident, they are ready as of incident reporting as of tomorrow, ROI based on your various competent authorities timescale. That is how we've interpreted this, and this is something that we see that across various competent authorities. So, for example, from a BaFin point of view, which I think is one regulator that have given one specific date to submit a register of information. We've not seen a very specific date, at least in the public domain, on the register of information. So any entities that have been regulated by BaFin, they need to submit it by 11th of April. They Within BaFin there were multiple supervisory questionnaires, which is now been abolished, and everything now comes under DORA. That has been consistent message. On MFSA, we did a webinar where head of IT supervision had joined the session. This was a webinar for Malta's Bankers Association, and their MFSA had indicated that their supervisory priority is going to be on Article 5. So they want to ensure that organizations have governance set up as per the requirements of Article 5, in addition to obviously the reporting and having a roadmap for DORA compliance, because they had gradually laid down expectation for 2023, 2024, and now for 2025, their supervisory action was focused on Article 5. DNB again, states that they expect institutional to deploy resources to prepare for DORA. They also have made communications around reporting of major incidents and ROI. Though I have not seen the dates with DNB, so if there are entities that are regulated by DNP and they have received the dates, please let us know through chat functionality. We may have missed some sort of notifications on that. Staying in Netherlands, the AFM, they have provided 3 specific recommendations to entities, which is perform full gap analysis and allocate resources, ensure that your critical functions have been identified with mapping to ICT assets and third parties. They have made explicit recommendation on consider internal outsourcing as external outsourcing, meaning that if we are using an intra-group provider, uh, it is still considered as an outsourcing. Intra-group providers, you have to put them in register of information. There has to be a contract, etc. So that is what they have provided as a recommendation. What we noted is for register of information would be sent, there would be some sort of information that would be sent by February 2025. This has been the summary. Uh, um, Lian has indicated that she's surprised how little January New Year guidance comms there have been from regulators. Well, there are certain regulators that have made communications with respect to DORA in December. In January, we followed BaFin a lot. BaFin has been super active. That's been one regulator that has been super active. We've also seen very recently NBB come out with it. CSF had made a publication. Incidentally, just today there was a publication by the Austrian regulator FMA, and Malta also had some sort of comms going out today, which basically asked to be clued in. So the regulators are picking up. There have been some competent authorities that have been super active in this space.
I think the other piece is that the regulators themselves are having to get their own houses in order. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. The scope of the number of organizations that are being regulated has expanded massively. So, yeah, they might be doing some internal stuff as well. Sorry, Shreeji.
No. Indeed, but kind of aligned with what you say. Then NBB, they conducted a webinar where they expected on how the ROI should be reported in. Fairly surprisingly, they have asked for 4 ways in which ROI can be submitted to them, where one of them is XBRL CSV. That's a new format. Then you have XBRL XML, which has been traditionally the reporting from any of the EBA reportings. There is a CSV also possible, and then they have provided an interface where you could manually input a register of information on the platform. In addition, which is something that again we've not seen with any other competent authorities, they asked all the regulated entities to provide a dummy incident report by the 10th of Jan. So this was last week. And provide 2 contacts who are responsible for ICT incident. So this was expected last week. We've not seen any other competent authorities do this, but again, fairly surprising that they kind of asked organizations in order to be prepared for 17th of Jan. Again, this is something that we've missed in your regulator. Do let us know. We're happy to kind of enlighten ourselves also. On CSSF, they made a comms on 2 ways to report incident, where one of them is through their standard procedure on eDesk, and the other is they're going to provide an API. In addition to that, the ROI needs to be submitted within a date range, which is April 1 to April 15th, via the eDesk platform. So CSS have just released a circular, I think, a couple of days back, if I'm not mistaken. But again, fairly detailed guidance or circulars on DORA compliance and what their expectations are. From an FMA point of view, well, they released a checklist. This checklist was released somewhere mid-December, December timeframe, providing organizations to kind of have a look at where they are from a compliance point of view across the 5 areas of DORA compliance, and the expectation was to have it evaluated and have a plan from a compliance point of view. They also had a more overarching comms today, which was more around their supervisory priorities overall. So from an FMA point of view, what are the supervisory priorities, which included also ICT risk and oversight of ICT third parties in the context of DORA, everything under DORA. Central Bank of Ireland, they also had comms done mid of December, which was that prioritize implementation of incident management. They noted for the fact that they appreciate achieving DORA compliance by uh, Jan 17th is going to be a challenge. But what they are going to assess is how they have assessed their gaps, how they have put a plan from a compliance point of view, and are they on track or not. ACPR, now again, this is something fairly unique, and that's the reason for bringing it in. In addition to the actual reporting, they have also issued an annex to report on internal controls, and this organizations will have to report by 30th of June 2025. So this kind of comms we've not seen elsewhere. Now with ACPR, we saw that and noted that and thought it was fairly interesting. It might be a cue that other regulators may pursue this during the course of 2025. So it's pretty interesting for other entities to be aware of it as an information. Ed, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think one of the key takeaways here is there are different expectations from different competent authorities, and it sounds obvious, but it's we've mentioned it. The devil's in the detail. The fact that the ACPR have this explicit requirement for a report on internal controls is, unique within the competent authorities landscape. So if you are regulated by them, you do need to do it. Having an understanding of what kind of format the ROI needs to be in is, it's now we're really in the weeds, but it's so fundamental to making sure that you hit those deadlines and you meet your kind of regulatory obligations. So yeah, understand which competent authority you are reporting to. Go and have a look at the advice that they are giving explicitly to organizations. Obviously, you want to try and achieve full DORA compliance, but if you're at the point where you're a little bit late out of the blocks, then potentially you've got an opportunity to scrape by doing kind of the bare minimum that's necessary. Obviously, we could always advocate full compliance, but realities of business and pressures potentially mean that you're going to need to do what's necessary to get over the line.
Yep, indeed. And I'm glad you brought it up, the point around devils in the details around ROI reporting, because in Belgium, there were 4 options available, whereas I think the CSF has made clear that they're expecting the ROI in CSP. Now, for organizations that are going for a technology platform for ROI, it's fundamentally important to understand how your regulator is expecting the format to be in for you to report it back to them. So you would want to ensure that your technology solution is able to support the format that your regulator is asking for. And if not, you have to have a conversation with them to revise, append the platform for that.
Yeah, I think spot on. The last thing you want to do is download it and then have to edit and adjust and manipulate. It kind of ruins the point of having this technology kind of solution in place. But we are seeing an increase from clients around, I guess, technology-driven solutions in this space, just because the extent in which this, I guess, is a living, breathing document, and it needs to be kind of kept up to date, and the level of dependencies across different fields and all that kind of stuff means that it does, technology does aid itself very nicely to supporting this, and we've got a number of partners that we work very closely with to provide these kind of solutions.
One more poll question. This is a multiple input. Which of these areas are being focused upon in the short term at your organization from a compliance point of view? Note that you may have ticked all the boxes, but what is the focus from an organization point of view in next 1 to 2 months time frame? And there's a view that ESA position has been harsh given the draft final text standard as well as comms that impact major ICT being declared at EU level in Q2. Where I sort of, but there has been, one major change that they brought in, which was only around LEI and UID. Apart from that, there's no significant change in the regulatory text that was, shared as a final draft for their approval. So I do follow that from an organization point of view, there is an element of uncertainty. But I think the draft regulatory text and the final draft of the regulatory text has been available I think the last one was July, if I'm not mistaken. So organizations would have some time to prepare for it. Though I do believe it's going to be a bit inadequate.
I think if you the broader landscape, the threat landscape, and the potential for large, wide-reaching cyber attacks from threat actors who are politically motivated. I think at the moment, the geopolitical situation that we've got in Europe is just so fundamental to get this bit right. It makes complete sense for this. When you saw the requirements and the expectations from competent authorities, consistently we're looking at the reporting element of an incident. Makes perfect sense when you see the geopolitical stuff. The threat intelligence guys here at Thomas Murray are constantly tracking threat actors who are actively seeking to interfere and cause harm to industries and countries, almost on a continuous rolling basis. So, yeah, absolutely critical that bit's right.
Yep. And Ed, not surprisingly, most of the focus, as in the top answer, is on revising contracting with ICT third parties. I think that has been a constant struggle where we've been asked a lot of questions around what if the third parties don't update the contract, which is a fairly valid question. Unfortunately, there's no direct answer to it. What we've seen organizations do is work with addendums and ask for comments and feedback on that addendum from their ICT third parties and at least initiate the conversation. But indeed, I think that those kind of contracting conversations will take time, which will impact overall compliance. So to see that, fairly interestingly, there are few who have responded with creating inventories of business process, functions and ICTs, which is a fundamental element to DORA because everything is anchored around it. Critical and important functions, it goes into your register of information. It impacts how you report on incidents. So it is a fundamental requirement from a DORA point of view. Which impacts a lot. And then you have there are organizations that are preparing DORA compliance roadmap also, and then there's an equal distribution across all aspects other than the first one. I think the only thing I'm surprised, maybe pleasantly, is incident response plan to meet for our notification deadlines, which means that organizations are fairly prepared to do that.
I'm always wary with instant response plans. Everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face, I think is a fairly famous quote from, I think it's Muhammad Ali, but correct me if I'm wrong. So make sure that your plan has been punched in the face, tested. There's no point in having it without actually kind of putting yourself through the process of kind of actively testing it. It goes above and beyond the traditional instant response because it does involve all of these different elements across the business. So being able to rapidly, Mike Tyson, thank you ever so much, Roger. Yeah, I know I feel like a fool. But yeah, thank you, Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan to get punched in the face. Yes, so because it involves finance, because it involves all these different components that typically wouldn't necessarily be involved in an incident response plan and exercise, I would question whether it's fully effective in the new landscape that we find ourselves in. And as Shreeji said, contracting always takes a long time. It always takes longer than you think it should. But it's an uncomfortable reality that it needs to be done.
Great. As we wrap up on our recommendations, if you have any questions, please shoot them in the chat. You can also reach out to us later, so feel free to reach out to us later also. But closing thoughts, Ed. I don't want to read all the points, but
yeah,
how do you?
I think there's an element of being quite smug, and forgive us for being a little bit smug here, but I think these are some of the things that we've been talking about for a while. So none of this should come as a surprise, but if you've got less than 24 hours to get this done, but if you could get 8 things done by tomorrow, these would be the things. There's nothing here that should come as a surprise, as I said, but critical functions and understand what they are. Probably the piece here that really is highlighted by the wider presentation is the importance of following the competent authorities, and your competent authority, and understanding what their expectations are, not just for tomorrow, but then for the longer period of time. And there's hopefully a couple of bits here around kind of reflecting and taking it away. So having the approved budget and making sure that the board are responsible for signing off on not just compliance tomorrow and today, but then kind of on an ongoing basis. I don't think this is going anywhere. This isn't one of these flash in the pan, one and done. DORA's here, DORA's gone away. I think it's going to really kind of rumble on for an extended period of time. I think we've all seen the importance of technology, particularly in the financial services sector, and it's part of digital Europe. So yeah, expect the ripples to extend far beyond Europe on this one.
Yep, indeed. From my point of view, I think the first 2 bullets are something that, as we get to tomorrow, is fairly important. Like, I could not stress much on it. The first one, we spoke just very briefly a few minutes ago. It's the cornerstone of everything. I would expect most organizations to have control over this. If not, this is the first thing that you should push your DORA team to achieve, and in parallel work on incident reporting. Now, the way major incident classification works is fairly broad, to be honest. And there's a phenomenal flowchart that simplifies the logic on how you arrive on classification of major incident from BaFin. Again, you may think we are biased towards BaFin, but following various regulators and how they've
been very good.
They have been fairly with their FAQ page, with everything. So if there is an element of uncertainty on interpretation, we would definitely recommend you to visit the BaFin page on DORA.
Sorry, we've got 1 minute left.
But the point that I was trying to make it is, when we've heard or spoken to organizations, they've said, yeah, but we'll never have major incidents. There are various thresholds that we need to break. But that's not the case. There is one sort of direct major incident is when it impacts critical and important service or function. So, and then the reporting elements start. So this is fundamentally important that you get it right, you are on top of it, and you should actively work on it in the very immediate future. That would be my closing theme on it, while you work on all the others through 2025 Q1 and Q2.
And a final takeaway from me, Thomas Murray is here to help. So the DORA engagements that we take part in are delivered. Luckily, Shreeji, oversees them and is the real kind of guiding force and the for all intents and purposes, the guiding light in this space. So there's that side of things as well. So we are here to help. Hopefully you can join some of the other sessions that we have further down the line. And yeah, but thank you ever so much for coming along. And yeah, if you need to kind of get in contact with us, then please, drop us an email or stick some time in our diaries and we can chat further.
Yep. Thank you so much for joining. We are at the top of the hour. Appreciate for all of you hanging in there. As I'd mentioned, if you have questions, want to speak about DORA or generally anything, you have a QR code. Just book us time in the diary, and we'll be able to connect. Thank you ever so much. I'll see you next week again on the webinar for incident reporting. Cheers all. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much all. Take care.
Already.